welcome to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my beautiful wife, Sarah.
Hello.
And in this episode, we're going to be story time.
Yeah.
Story time with Cody and Sarah on this podcast you're listening to right now.
He literally does things like that all day, every day.
Not all day, every day, just like most of the days.
Yeah.
Sarah speaks in hyperbole, and I'm a realist.
No, I speak in literal terms.
Very much so. Before we jump into that,
Millennial literal terms.
Yes, exactly. Just a big thank you, a shout out to our sponsor, Hint Water. Hint is a flavored water company that comes in still and sparkling versions. We have an entire fridge full of Hint Water.
Yes, we do.
And it is beautiful. I love it whenever I open my fridge and there's just that myriad of options and colors.
Nice colors.
If you want to try out Hint Water, you can go to hint.co/deeplycurious. And also, this podcast is sponsored by our merch, which just recently dropped. You can check that out by going to shop.codyjensen.com. We've got a few different Deeply Curious shirts and hoodies on there. Mm-hmm. And also some, I guess, crossover Deeply Curious to YouTube merch as well that says love harder, because we believe you need to work hard but love harder.
Exactly.
So both of those things help out the show tremendously. If you want to check out Hint by going to hint.co/deeplycurious, or check out our merch at shop.codyjensen.com.
Yes.
One day we will have our own domain, but first,
Today is not that
day.
Also,
Okay.
do yourself a favor and purchase the Blackberry Hint Water. Okay. Just throwing that out there. It's the best.
So story time.
Story time. Well, I guess, do you want to intro it?
I went to Africa.
Is that the intro?
That's the end.
Well, I guess I'm just going to be asking you questions about your trip. But so you went to Africa you were in Africa for 2 weeks.
Correct the mundo.
Yeah. So you were in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And Cape Town.
Yes. And London for 12 hours.
We're ignoring that you were in London.
I'm not trying to rub it in. It's just, I'm a realist and you have to state the facts. And the facts are, I was in London, our favorite city.
Listen, he was traveling for 2 weeks, which was already kind of a tough thing for me to swallow. Whenever he got the job, I came home that day and he goes, I have some really good news that you're going to have a really hard time being happy about. And I was like, you get to leave, don't you? So that's how it went. But then I found out he was going to have a layover in London, and I actually cried about that. Because you were in London on Saturday. So I woke up on Saturday morning, and literally the first thing I did was I was like, oh, Cody's in London. And I literally cried. And then I was like, okay, it's enough. Throwing a pity party for yourself. Get up and pretend like he's not there. So I've just erased that whole thing from my memory, pretty much.
Yeah. And by crying because I was in London, what Sarah means is crying because I was gone and she already missed me so much.
Right. It had nothing to do with the fact that you were in my favorite city and I wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
It
definitely.
was just the fact that I was in a different city than the one that you currently inhabitate.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Inhabit.
Yes.
Yeah, inhabit.
And then you listen to Lainey's Fly Back to Me. All day long.
Actually, I think I was so excited because we haven't been apart in 9.5 years.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So we've been married for almost 10 years now. And for some reason, our life has just not been apart. We've never traveled apart, really. I mean, I think maybe you went to one conference for 3 days.
A couple of conferences with the church.
But never for more than 3 nights. And only maybe twice. It wasn't a big deal. We've never been apart. And even during the days.
And not even in the last 9+ years of being married. We
Right.
haven't been apart since we were like 15.
Right, because all of the trips we went on were together.
Yeah, like
Well, except, I mean, I did go on like a family vacation every once in a while,
Right.
but my family vacations weren't anything big.
Right, but for a full 2 weeks, that is the longest.
Right, that's the longest we've ever been apart.
We've been apart since we've been together when we were like 15 or 16 years old.
You are literally the only person I can handle being around all the time. That's a compliment.
Yeah,
actually.
that if you knew Sarah the way I know Sarah, that is actually a really good compliment.
Yeah. I mean, I do get tired of you, but I just need to like go away for a few hours and then I can like resettle myself and be fine. But there's not very many people in this world who I'm like, yeah, I'll spend 10 years with you and never leave your side. That's fine. Not very many people in this world that I could say that about.
It's just the one.
Just the one.
Yep.
But anyways, so never been apart, like ever. And so everyone like leading up to your trip was like, oh, are you going to miss him? And I felt so bad because I was like, literally, no. Like I didn't know how to even be like, oh yeah, like I couldn't fake it.
Because most of the people that we know and that are friends with and the people that we're asking are
like,
single people.
Yeah.
Or like
they
newly married.
Yeah. Or they haven't known us very long.
Yeah,
like none of my close friends who know me, they were like, oh, are you excited?
Yeah.
Like that's what they were asking. But a lot of people in New York haven't noticed very long. And so I just like couldn't even pretend like I was going to miss you. And which I know sounds bad, but whatever.
I mean,
you don't care, so that's all that matters. And I was like, no, I'm really excited to have 2 weeks to myself.
Yeah. And actually, my best friend Josh was in Africa with me. And when we were in Cape Town, which is like the last leg of the trip, he was asking me about like missing each other and you missing me. And he was like, do you think Sarah misses you? Or I don't remember the exact question, but I was like, no, I don't. I mean, I don't think she misses me or whatever. And he's like, I mean, how do you feel about that? And I was like, I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's only 2 weeks. And I mean, I'm only like just now, like beginning to be like, you know, missing Sarah. More so it's like, I wish Sarah was here experiencing this with me.
Right.
Than anything. And he was like, wow, that's like whatever. And I was like, I mean, I would be offended if it had been like 2 months and she's still like, eh.
See, you can stay.
But I mean, you know, a few weeks, I mean, I'm totally like, whatever. And he was like, he said something, you know, like that's very confident or secure, I guess. Yeah. In that relationship. I mean, yeah.
But the thing is like when you, I mean, I have like given you 9.5 years of not being apart. So like 2 weeks apart is nothing.
Yeah.
Compared to 9.5 years, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I was really excited about it. Mostly, I wish I had been the one who was leaving, honestly.
Obviously.
But I loved coming home to an empty apartment and sleeping in the middle of the bed, which is like a big thing for me. I don't know why. Like sleeping in the middle of the bed is just perfect.
I don't stop you from sleeping in the middle of the bed. I welcome
know,
you
but I don't
sleeping
want
in the middle of the bed.
anybody touching me.
Because if you were in the middle of the bed, that means you're basically cuddling me.
Exactly, and I don't want that.
Myself and being a love language of physical touch.
Right. And
100%. I'm like, please sleep in the middle of the bed.
Yeah, and mine being the last love language is physical touch. I'm like, get away. But more than anything, I loved coming home and just watching whatever I wanted without having to be like, hey, what do you want to watch? Or do you think we should watch an episode of this? Or are you interested in a movie tonight? Like, I didn't have to do that at all. And that was so nice.
You didn't have to hear me say after you started something, what did you just turn on?
Exactly. I did a whole Harry Potter marathon. Because every time I turn on
Or me saying, are you sure you need to watch another episode of The Office?
Exactly. Yes. I watched whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and I didn't have to check in with anybody.
And you know what else you did that didn't legitimately bother me, but did bother me?
Okay.
While I was gone. Just being there and knowing Sarah hasn't put up the Murphy bed one time.
Oh, I didn't put it up one time. Like, in 2 weeks, I didn't put it up.
I'm just thinking about our apartment.
Actually, that's not true because we had a dinner party over here.
Yes.
So I put it up once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm here, it goes up every single morning.
Yeah.
Without fail. And
yeah.
then any time that Sarah's left to do that on her own.
Don't do it.
And so I was just thinking, like,
because I don't believe in making your bed.
we don't. Okay. Well,
it's an argument that we're just always going to have, but I don't believe in making your bed. I think it's the dumbest. I mean, I get how some people need to compartmentalize and like, you know, whatever. And especially in a space like ours where everything is the same room. But like at our house in Tulsa, we slept in the bedroom, we woke up, and then we didn't go back into the bedroom until the next night to sleep. Like, you never see it. So why spend all of your energy making the bed? Just shut the door and you still have a clean space.
Because
I don't believe in making the bed.
making your bed, it gets your day started.
Not for me, though. It's
like
not.
You make it and you made that accomplishment. Also, I think just like in a upcoming vlog, I don't know if this vlog has come out as of right. Anyways, in a video on our channel that is either out or coming out, you said something along the lines of you have making decisions today for your future self.
Right.
And I feel like making your bed is a gift to your future self because getting into your bed, getting into a nicely made bed for whenever you go to sleep. Again, the sheets are not crinkled or anything like that. You just like slide in there and the blanket is over you. That is so much nicer than like getting into bed with like everything just a ruckus.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, we firmly disagree on this. Here's the thing. Your bed is going to get unmade every single night when you sleep in it. And the thing, okay, so I'm a little bit weird with the bed anyway because I sleep on top of the sheets. I don't, even what is the not the fitted
comforter?
sheet, but the other sheet. I sleep on top of both.
The top sheet.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I sleep on top of both of them.
Yes.
And then I bring a different blanket to sleep I don't know. I'm a weirdo.
Very much so.
And so I like having the blanket like wrapped around me. So like getting into a nice clean bed it's just not a thing for me. Like,
you know what you could have instead of a blanket wrapped around you? I could be wrapped around you.
No.
Holding you.
Because I don't want a person touching me. You know what I want is one of those weighted blankets.
I am a weighted blanket. I'm a heated weighted blanket.
No, I don't want a person. I want a weighted blanket.
Silly.
Agree to disagree. Anyways, I don't feel like making your bed is as big a deal as all of the experts make it out to be. It has never once helped or hurt me. It is just what it is. So I did not make the bed, which means I did not put the Murphy bed up every single day.
Right.
So if I were living on my own in New York City, I would have wasted a lot of money on a Murphy bed.
That is true.
Though I do feel like it's still beneficial when you have people come over.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You would just live with it until
Yeah,
like, somebody was coming over and then you would like put it up.
Right. I liked it when it was up. I was like, oh, floor space.
Yeah.
But
floor space is very important.
I just am not. It doesn't affect.
Anyways, we got on a long tangent of making the bed.
Yeah. Let's get back to Africa. So I was pretending you weren't in London.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went to Africa. So you were in Zimbabwe for 8 days. Then that was work time.
Yes.
So my question is, because I don't feel like Africa has ever been a thing that you and I have discussed really as far as like places to go.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your initial feelings about Africa?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say what were your thoughts on Africa.
Well, no, on Zimbabwe.
Yeah, because Africa is massive.
Right.
And there's so many different places in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's essentially like that would be like going to Mexico City and saying like, "How did you like America?" And so it's like
Mexico City.
Yeah, because it's in America. It's in North America.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, like people.
Right.
Like it's one big America. We just happen to like just the United States of America. We tend to steal the continent.
We are America.
Yes.
Yeah. Nationalism.
Yeah. Okay, but anyways, off on another tangent.
Yeah. Okay, so what are your initial thoughts about? Did you have any like expectations? I guess.
Well, I mean, I had a little bit of expectation just because the people that were bringing me there had like we had conversations about Zimbabwe and kind of like the political, I guess
unrest.
Unrest, yeah, that they're in, and like they're in a election season, and so like the the person that's in power right now is like really trying to protect that because he got the power through a coup of overthrowing the previous president.
Very
And
dramatic.
he, is actually he's holding an election to make him fairly the president. But he very much so wants to be the president, and so he's using every resource at his disposal to make sure that he is elected president.
So not very fair.
Yeah, long thing. So I talked to a lot of Zimbabweans about that, about I mean, it's basically like, whenever the Trump Hillary, like, November, election was, that basically 6 months leading up to that, anybody who talked to any American, that is like going to be part of the conversation because it's such a forefront thing. So because that's the season that they were in, a lot of the Zimbabweans that I was talking to, we would talk about the election and politics and like whether like, they think that Robert Mugabe was like, good or bad, or if it's better now. And like, it's so nuanced and like all that type of stuff. So that was actually really interesting because I mean, I didn't know anything about Robert Mugabe going into it. And most people don't.
Maybe explain just like one or two sentences of who he is.
I mean, I just know basically what the people told me, and then I read like his Wikipedia, some entries of like learning. So I'm not like an expert by any means,
right?
But essentially, like he was elected president, but there either isn't term limits in Zimbabwe or he got rid of them and ended up being in power for many, many, many years, a couple decades. I don't remember exactly how long, but so I'm trying to think of how to succinctly say this. Basically, Zimbabwe used to be under UK rule. They were a British territory. They won their independence, and Robert Mugabe had a African nationalist agenda of getting rid of all Europeanism, that the UK had brought in through their years of rule. And they also had a massive, during that time, whether it was led by Robert Mugabe or not, they had a huge period of, I guess, like Zimbabweans, like actual Zimbabweans, taking back farms and land that were white owned. And so it was basically, what do you call it? Land, I can't remember the exact word, but land reclaiming is what it was. Yeah. But anyways, black Zimbabweans were going to white, they were Zimbabweans, farms, because they lived there. They were citizens. They were going to the white Zimbabweans' farms and murdering people and taking the farms and like all this stuff. That's essentially all I know on that. Like there's a lot of information. Right. Like I said, before I went to Zimbabwe, I didn't know anything about it. So just learning all of that type of stuff was very interesting. Which is
happening in Cape Town too, right?
Yes, and that is starting to happen in South Africa now. And basically, Zimbabwe was one of the most prosperous African nations, up until the transition of power from the UK to Robert Mugabe. And through his rule, he took it, basically collapsed the economy. Yeah. If you remember a few years ago, there was like news stories about Zimbabwe going around because they had printed a like $1 or $2 like $1 trillion bill.
I think I do remember that.
Because it became like a souvenir item. Like people wanted to like buy this because it was an actual piece of legal tender that said like $2 trillion. Yeah. Because that's how far the economy had fell.
Like $1, right. $1 US was like so, 2 trillion there or something.
Yeah, like they had to print those so that people didn't have to carry literal wheelbarrows worth of money to buy a bag of groceries.
That's insane.
And so all of that happened, and then political corruption was like a huge topic of conversation with like everybody that I talked to, just how much corruption there was, talking about how terrible the roads are, but there's actual money that is going into the city to fix the roads, but nothing is ever done because that money ends up going places.
Who knows where?
They had a ton of money come in from basically like this is probably wrong, but the UN or some sort of like refugee resettlement organization ended up giving millions of dollars to Zimbabwe because they actually had a lot of other African nation people who were refugees from those nations, and Zimbabwe took them in, and they said, hey, we need this money to take care of these refugees. Well, they're under like, they got cut off and they got put under investigation or something or other because, I mean, they gave them millions of dollars. That millions of dollars was nowhere to be found. Like somebody in the government like just took it. So like tons and tons of stuff like that. Speaking of roads, though, this is a really funny story. Like 3 people in Zimbabwe told me this. Because the roads are so bad. I mean,
potholes.
I mean, it's basically like dirt roads would probably be better than the paved roads that they had because they were so full of potholes that everybody is just swerving everywhere. Like you're going, you're on your side of the road. And all of a sudden, like 100 yards in front of you, the car in the other lane just swerves right in front of you, and then swerves back over before they hit you because they're avoiding a pothole. And like 3 Zimbabweans told me, they said, in Zimbabwe, or in America, you get pulled over and they know they suspect you of being a drunk driver. If you're swerving all over the road, but in Zimbabwe, they pull you over for going straight. Because if you're going straight, you're probably drunk.
Yeah, because you're not missing any of the potholes.
Yes. But anyways, I mean, so like that type of stuff was very interesting, like learning all of like the political stuff. I was like asking everybody any question, tons of questions. I was learning as much as I could. And it was also fascinating. But as far as my impressions,
what did you spend time in the capital city?
We literally drove through it. Like,
oh, okay.
So it's Harare is the capital city of Zimbabwe, and we just like there was one night that one of the pastors, what it was with the team of people that had hired me, was taking them to go like shopping, and I went with them just so I could see Harare. And I mean, the city itself is like, it doesn't look any different than, I don't know, like a small downtown, metropolis area necessarily. Other than it kind of has the feel of like, I mean, Cuba is what I thought of. I've never been to Cuba, but that's kind of the feel that I felt like, I don't know, just like the architecture and then mostly, I don't know if this relates to Cuba, but just like it seemed like a lawless land. Like it's like this city was built and there's actual roads, there's actual crosswalks, all this type of stuff, but you're driving and there are just cars and people going whichever direction they please.
Yeah.
Like just like in New York, people walk out, they jaywalk and stuff like that. And, but it's different. Like people like one or 2 people may like run across the road and like jaywalk or something. But there it was like, there was no even regard for traffic or streets or crosswalks or anything. There was just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people just walking in wherever. But what was also interesting about Zimbabwe is you never heard anybody honking. They just drove. And I mentioned that to somebody. I was like, it's interesting that like nobody's honking at each other. And they're like, yeah, I mean, there's no point. I mean, people just notice like, get out of the way. Like, it's like crazy. As far as, I mean, so I don't know. I mean, like it was, I feel like Zimbabwe, or at least Harare, it was a little disappointing in the fact that it wasn't otherworldly.
Okay.
Just like
the culture wasn't so shocking.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a huge shock, like to, seeing like the buildings or seeing the way they live life. I mean, it was just farms. Like there was farms and then there was downtown and like everything ran like a Western, type place. You know, you go into a shop and you pick something up and you
Probably
buy it.
because
And like,
it was a British territory.
I mean, probably, yeah. So like there wasn't like a whole lot of like culture shock, you know,
Yeah.
versus like if you were, there are some places in Africa that are like that.
I love culture shock.
And like, you know, in Asian cultures and things that like it feels so foreign and so different, but it really, I don't know, it felt pretty regular. Like it just felt like a really poor regular.
Okay. See, that's interesting because like I said, I've never really like considered Africa like in like, oh, I want to go there someday. Like it's just not like African countries have never been high on my list. So I've never really considered Africa, but like when I think of it like, oh, it's not like Western at all. Like I don't know what I think, but I don't think that.
Yeah. That was a little interesting. Like just expecting it like Africa, you know? Like safari or something, but it's not. I mean, there are safari lands like in Zimbabwe, but like really northern Zimbabwe. I actually asked somebody about that, how like what animals are around here, and they were like, I mean, there really isn't. I mean, dogs, cats, you know, normal stuff, because of the nation being so poor that any animals that were around were killed and eaten. And so like now there's like protected areas, and then there's like actual safari land like up north. But as far as like where the big metropolis area is like there's nothing around here anymore.
But they don't have any like food shortages?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Don't know the answer.
Because I hadn't even considered that. I mean, obviously we've had like a couple of conversations like this, but the idea of like all of the political situation like causing, obviously like all of the political things causing like economic struggles, but I never thought about like food shortages.
I'm sure there was.
Yeah.
I mean the area that I was in was very poor.
Right.
And they were, you know, hungry. They fortunately were not, I don't think, at the level of starving. Yeah. Because they were able to farm. And so, I mean, like, farm, it makes it sound grandiose. Right. I guess
they had a garden, right, where they could grow.
They were able
food.
To grow things, and they were like, one of the things that they ate a lot of is this stuff called satsa, and it is like, I'm not pretty sure exactly how it's prepared, but essentially you dry corn. And then after the corn has been dried out in the sun for a couple weeks, you take all the kernels and then you grind that up into like cornmeal, basically, just into powder. Then they mix that powder with water and stuff, and it makes like this like oatmeal-y type thing.
It's pretty thick, right?
Very thick.
I'm pretty sure we had that when we went to Peru. Remember?
Yeah.
And I was so grossed out by it because I stuck my spoon in it and it didn't break the surface.
Yeah. If you watch my Zimbabwe documentary, I think there's 2 cooking scenes, and both of those women are making satsa. That's exactly what they're making.
Is it can you kind of like flavor it however you want?
I don't know. I mean, okay. I think you can if you have the option, but like because one of them, most of it is like a white looking stuff. I mean, it kind of looks like oatmeal. But then one of the ladies was making it, and it was completely green. So she put something in it. I don't know what it was.
Did you notice like when they make meals, do they have like meat often or not hardly at all?
So I didn't see any meat the whole time, but there were some people there that owned chickens.
Oh, okay.
And so
they at least have eggs. Right?
Eggs, yeah, they do. And then they do eat the chickens, but I think that's like, you know, not like regularly.
Yeah, right, because you only have so many chickens.
I actually asked about that because they are free range chickens. Like, I mean, it's, you know, they just
run
are
around.
Out. And I was asking somebody, I was like, well, do people ever like steal each other's chicken? Like if your chicken like wanders off like and goes somewhere, did somebody like just take it and eat
Yeah.
it. And they're like, no, I mean, not really. Like, these people live in like this pretty tight community. Like, if you were to do that, it'd be very hard to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody would see, somebody would tell.
Oh, you're cooking meat over there. Yeah.
And so like it would be dealt with.
So how far outside of the city was the village that you were working in?
I think it's like just a few miles.
Oh, okay. So it's not that far.
Yeah, not far at all.
Interesting. And then, okay, so explain the, you were working in, like the government owned land where people just squat there. But then there's another area that's like privately owned that people can purchase.
Right. So like, so I touched on this in the Zimbabwe documentary of just how there's parts of the land that is just like, it's just land, like, land that is not privately owned is owned by the government. So it's just like, it's land. And people have come in and like squatted there, and, basically the government is essentially just like ignores it. I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, it's not like they're needing the land for something. And so anyways, but then there is like privately owned land very, very close to it. Like with a stone's throw. And that land is privately owned, and some of the people in that like very poor area have like worked their way up through either selling produce or something that they learned to make, or whatever it is, and saved up around like $300 USD to put down a down payment on this land. And once they do that, then they can start building on the land with an agreement that they pay $30 a month or whatever it is. I don't know exactly the price, but essentially they put their down payment on their mortgage,
right?
Is what, like, until they, and most of the plots cost around like $3,000 USD. That is just for the land, and they can build and do whatever they want on it. So
people normally build like more permanent structures.
Yeah, they were all like, most of them were wood,
okay.
like slats, I guess. And then there were a few people who had built actual brick, like little hut things. I mean, smaller than our 300 square foot apartment.
Right.
Like they were really small. Maybe broken up into 2 rooms. But yeah, little brick houses.
So, okay, in Zimbabwe, because I want to talk about Cape Town too, because I think that's fascinating. In Zimbabwe, what was like your favorite? I mean, I think probably just the people, but like, kind of explain like what you were most surprised by, or like what like, or like if somebody is like, Zimbabwe, I've never thought about that. Like, what are the things that you would say?
Well, I don't think I can actually answer that, because I spent the entire 8 days in this one little tiny, very, very, very poor, grass hut village. And like I said, there was one day that we drove into the actual city, and that was like, I mean, literally drove through downtown, and then we didn't even get out of the car. So like, I haven't experienced Zimbabwe in any form or fashion.
Okay.
But there is this thing called Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe that they were telling me about, that I had never heard of, but apparently are like world famous. And like they were Zimbabwean, so they could be, I've looked at pictures, but they, they were telling me about it, and they were like, they are bigger and better than Niagara Falls. And from I can't confirm that stat, but I can confirm from the photos I saw, they look huge.
Really?
And so it's like a destination.
Which is so interesting, because when I think of Africa, I think of like orange, brown dirt.
Yeah.
But
yeah, again, though, it's like, think about how much, variety of nature there is between Canada.
Yeah.
All the way down to the bottom of Mexico.
Yeah.
How many mountain ranges, how many like, glaciers and lakes, and like, there's so much.
It's just interesting, the like notions you like just kind of assume in your head. Or like maybe because, I mean, I wouldn't say I was like super educated on Africa in school or anything. Like we learned that it was Africa, you know. Oh, safaris are there, that kind of thing. So like
poverty and safaris is like what you learn.
Yeah, you have this like idea in your head, but it can be just as, I mean, it is just as interesting as anywhere else. Like especially any other Western area. Like
it definitely made me want to go back.
Yeah.
Like even though I would spend the whole time like in that, you know, one little place, like hearing all the different things and like it made me even want to go back to Zimbabwe and like, you know, do like a tour of like the fun like things that you can do and like the more, you know, nature stuff in the Victoria Falls and, you know, the whatever, like there's a lot of really like awesome stuff that you can like experience, I guess, as like a vacation or a tourist or something.
Yeah.
But I really am thankful and love that I got to be like not do that stuff and like learn and meet like all these just like people that are just living their life and like talk to them. Like that is really, I mean, I will remember that as much as if I would have like gone ziplining and like saw the falls and like all
I think
stuff.
that's like a common I don't know if it's a common thing that happens. Anyway, I feel like, you know, in America, like we're very obviously privileged here, and like not just privileged to live where we live and like, or be able to afford to live, you know, anywhere in America. Like if you own a car or 2 cars or whatever it is, you're in the top 2% of the richest people in the world. That's literally like everybody in America.
Right. It's like if it's like if you make $30,000 or $40,000 a year, like you're in the top 2% of the entire world,
which is wild, insane. Like we're wildly privileged. I know it comes with its hardships too, but you know, we're privileged, and also privileged to be able to say like, oh, I want to go travel to Africa soon. You know, like just the privilege of being able to say like, I want to travel or I can't wait to travel to this place is insane, and we take it for granted. But I think like, you know, whenever you say like, oh, I want to travel to this place, you automatically think of like, oh, what do I get to do? Like, what are the fun things that I get to experience? I mean, I do it too. I'm like constantly thinking about the things that I get to experience. But really, the huge impact of travel is like learning cultures and like seeing everyday life and how people live. And that's what actually impacts you. That's what grows you as a person. That's why travel is important. You know, it's not so that you can go ziplining through Costa Rica, even though I really want to do that. Right. Like it's about like the people that you're going to meet and like the cultures you're going to learn. Right.
It's like if I just went to Zimbabwe and like I did a safari tour and like, you know, we did all this like cool stuff, I would have come back saying, Zimbabwe is a, you know, beautiful country or whatever. Right. Like, and, you know, that's it. Yeah. You know, I mean, like that's the experience I would have had. Right. But I had a much richer experience of learning now of this and like without studying anything, just from talking to people, learning this like very rich and like hard history.
Complicated
history, like of this little piece of the world that nobody really talks about outside of, you know, that area. Well, what should I say is nobody really talks about in America. Yeah. In the United States of America.
See, we did it again.
You know, and it's like, I just like learning about that actual like culture as a whole. Just, I mean, even though I only even now know a small little bit of their experience, a small little bit of their, you know, history and knowledge and stuff like that. But I know something. I know something more. I am now more educated than I was before. Yeah. And I can look at the world. I can look at Zimbabwe. I can look at where we are in just, I mean, even if it's just a little tweak or a little bit different, it's different.
A miniature shift in your perspective or your mindset does a world of difference.
And I think that's like one of the bigger takeaways. Like in a lot of the comments on the Zimbabwe video were like, this just makes me think about, you know, like what I care about, you know, because like these people, they don't have time to think about much else other than making, getting food.
Right. How am I going to
water,
survive today?
Like, how am I need to get water, I need to get food, and I need to try to make a little bit of money so I can
get food tomorrow.
A little bit of food, or I can buy, a little something, for my shelter or whatever it is. Like, there's not much outside of survival that they get to think about.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And it's just shocking. It really helps me, I guess, like shift my perspective back to like what really matters, right? Which is people. And like I was shocked to learn as you were like creating the Zimbabwe film, we were like doing a bunch of research and I didn't know, well, I knew nothing about Zimbabwe and I'm huge. I feel very strongly about the refugee crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that, what was it, 25% of Zimbabwe's population have fled as refugees.
Yeah, well, fled as immigrants or refugees, yeah.
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 This is like over 3 million people or something. That's a shocking number. 25% of an entire country. Like, I had no idea. Yeah. And that's something I feel like you should be aware of. And it's crazy that as Americans, I feel probably as westernized, people, but I can speak for America.
The United States of America.
The United States of America. We have so much information at our disposal, but it is so hard to find information like that. Like how I don't know. It makes me want to, post signs on my walls that are like, look up information about another country today. Like, don't worry about your own tiny petty problems. There's so much more happening that you can do something about, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest perspective that, getting to do these kinds of things gives you.
Yeah. I mean, in what context would I have just like stumbled upon this?
Right. Right. Because we don't seek it out.
Right.
We have so much information, but we don't seek it out. And I also feel like I don't seek out information because it's hard for me to tell what's like, true or legit or what's not skewed and biased and whatever. So it makes me want to kind of just like forget everything. But it's so important.
Other than being in Zimbabwe, I do have a few different like, in my travels, on multiple plane rides.
Yes.
I have some, maybe not wild, but some funny.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, funny stories.
Yeah.
But before I get into the plane stories, just a reminder that this podcast is sponsored by our new merch, which you can check out by going to shop.codyjensen.com.
Okay, so airplane stories.
Yes.
Tell me all of them.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of what in chronological order, which one happened first. So I think the first one that's the lightest story is I don't remember. It was like one of my like I think on the way to Zimbabwe that I got on to my seat, and there was this Indian guy who, he was like in the full like long shirt with his shoes off, and I was like, oh good, he has his shoes off, I can take mine off and not like feel not feel weird like taking my shoes off next to somebody. So like I kicked my shoes off and we were just sitting there, and he's like an older guy. I mean, I don't know exactly, I can't, it'd be hard to like guess how old he is, but I mean mid-life, like he wasn't like elderly. And we're just like sitting there, and he doesn't really like speak English, I don't think, because we were talking about the TV and I was like helping him with the remote or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's a overnight flight.
Right.
And I'm sitting there like watching my movie, and he all of a sudden like he starts drifting over to my shoulder, and his head like makes it over to my shoulder, and like he's like laying on my shoulder, and so I'm like I push him like back over into his seat.
What do you do in those situations?
I know. I push him back over into his seat, and like he kind of stirs or whatever, and then he kind of like, you know, the motion of getting cozy.
Yeah.
You know, like the yeah. And then he like gets a little cozy, and then he leans right back over on me.
Was he still?
And
he wasn't asleep.
He wasn't aware like
of what was happening.
Yeah, he was like in that daze, you know. And so like he lays back over, and I like push him, and I'm like pushing hard, and he's like leaning fully against me, and so I'm like pushing him like
Dude.
shaking him, and finally he kind of wakes up, and he kind of looks at me, and then I like, you know, make the I guess the gesture like you're laying on me, and he like kind of he kind of stirs a little bit, and then kind of leans back, and then like not even 10 seconds later, he does the full on cozy, like getting cozy. He slouches back, and then he lays over like he's gonna lay his head on my lap, like he's not aware of what he's doing, like this is, you know, like he's definitely not awake, he's like
in the dream state.
In the dream state, and like he curls up like fetal position and lays his head in my lap. And I'm like pushing him like, no, that's not happening. No, sir. So I push him like way over, and then finally like he, you know, sits back up and like goes to sleep, and he didn't like try that again. But like full on fetal position, laying in my lap, and like an older guy.
Oh, that's so funny. I don't ever know what to do in those situations because you don't want to be rude. Like they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, probably the lap probably seems a little much, but he probably had no idea what was actually happening. I mean,
he probably has no memory of it.
Yeah. So you don't want to be rude, but also like personal space, dude. Like we're in an airplane.
Right.
I need as much space as I can get.
It's like we land, and then we're like getting up, and I'm like, hey, remember that one time whenever you curled up in a ball and laid on my lap?
I always kind of do the whole like.
Right.
So maybe they'll just like jerk their head and that like
just move your shoulder a little bit.
Yeah. That's usually what I do. Because I'm hoping they'll just like jerk their head.
Yeah. No, it was a full-on battle with this sleeping guy.
That's funny.
So that was on one of the first legs of the trip. Then on the next leg of the trip, I was walking down the jump bridge. Well, first I was just waiting in the terminal, and these two Russian guys walk up behind me, and they're like talking really loudly to each other in Russian. And so like not only are they talking really loudly behind me, I can't even understand what they're saying to like at least maybe enjoy their conversation.
Yeah, eavesdrop a little.
Yeah, talking super loudly, and they smell like alcohol. Like they had obviously been at the bar drinking, because it was like that spoiled, like been drinking for a while,
like stale
smell. Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
And so they smelled bad. And they were talking to each other really loudly, and then we start walking, and we're like kind of making our way down the jump bridge, but it's like a long line, so it's not like just a, you know, walk straight to the airplane, and we're like waiting, and every single time we stopped, one of the guys runs into me. Like I stop, he hits my backpack, and I'm like, you do that one more time, we're gonna have some issues. And so like I turn, and I kind of go like I basically get to the side of the person in front of me. Instead of walking in a single file, I just like walk beside them, because I'm like, quit hitting me.
Yeah.
He does it still. He moves like I don't even know. Like I move to the side, and he still goes right behind me, and every time we stop, dunk, right into me.
Oh,
like,
that is so...
And then it wasn't like hit me and then backs up. It's like he hits me and stands right behind me.
I am... Like, there are not a lot of things that get me immediately angry, you know? But somebody who is not aware of personal space, I could just punch them in the face. Like, there's something, especially when you're in a line, like, especially when they're standing behind you, because you, like, you can't move, and you feel like you're just, like, crowding in on yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Ooh, there are a few things that get me so furious.
So we're getting on the plane. That keeps happening. They're annoying me. I mean, it's like, where you're waiting in line for like 10 minutes or whatever. So that keeps happening. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking, these guys are going to sit next to me. Like, we have assigned seats, but I was like, I'm so annoyed right now that the universe is going to sit these guys next to me. That's the way.
And the universe was like, all right.
So I get to my seat. There's nobody sits next to me. I'm in the middle of the plane, in a big plane. So 4 seats across.
Yeah.
On the plane.
That's always the worst.
And so I'm on the aisle. There's 3 seats next to me, and everybody's on the plane. Nobody is sitting next to me, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. So I like set my bags down, like on the seat, and I'm like, ooh.
Thank you, universe.
Well, these 2 guys, they decide, oh, well, this plane isn't full, so we're gonna go sit wherever we darnest please. And where do they choose to sit? In my empty row. Very luckily, they left the 1 seat, between us. But they sat over there, and I can still smell the alcohol, even a seat away. I was, we shared the empty seat for our bags, for our snacks and things, like general courtesy.
Civil people.
Nobody's sitting here. We can share it as for like our little snack holder. Well, one of the guys was either significantly drunker or a different type of drunk.
Yeah.
And they're like, again, talking really loudly. And this is an overnight flight as well. And it's like in the middle of the night. And the guy on the opposite aisle seat, he's like being the loudest. And he is kicking and hitting the seat in front of him.
Ooh,
he's basically, so picture, like he's basically appears restless. Like he's just restless. He's like rocking back and forth, and he's like, tired. And so he's laying his head on the seat in front of him, but then he's putting his hands up over his head, putting them on the seat in front of him, and then laying his, forehead on like his wrist. But he's not doing it gently.
Right.
And the guy, sitting in that seat keeps like looking behind like, dude, like stop.
You have your own seat.
Then he's doing that so aggressively, because it's basically like he's frustrated that he can't fall asleep, whatever. So he's like taking his frustration out on this guy's seat.
Yeah.
But he's like so aggressively moving, and he flops his hand not onto the seat, but over onto the guy's head. Literally has his hand on this guy's head.
Oh my gosh.
And the guy like pushes his hand off, like, stop touching me.
Yeah.
So that's happening. And then, maybe an hour or hours, I don't know. It's a really long flight. So I don't know how much time goes by, but then he starts like talking to the person across the aisle on his other side in Russian. And they're like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, I can't speak their language. But the guy that was 1 row up on the aisle, he starts he reaches up, starts like tapping him, like trying to say something to him, saying things in Russian. And the guy's like, I don't speak, like he didn't even speak English that well. This guy was like, I don't remember what language he said that he spoke, but he spoke English and this other language as his mother tongue. And he's like trying to not, I can tell that he's like trying to not escalate anything, not like,
right, because they're
whatever.
very obviously drunk. You have no idea how they're going to react.
Right, and we're on a plane.
And you're on a plane.
And so, he's being very gracious. And, I don't know what you're saying. He actually got up one time and, went back to his seat and kind of crouched down and, what are you trying to tell me? And then...
Thank God for people like that.
Yeah.
I don't have that
He goes back to his seat. And the guy starts tapping on him again, reaching up over an aisle, over 1 row up, is hitting this guy, like he's tapping him aggressively, and he turns around, and the guy holds out his hand to shake his hand. So the guy in the seat, he shakes his hand, and the Russian guy does the Trump move.
Oof.
And he literally pulls him out of his seat back to him.
Such an aggressive
and he has a hold of him, and they are almost nose to nose, and he's looking at him, staring at him, and he says something. He's like, I don't know what you're saying. And so he lets him go, and then like, I don't know, some time passed, and I'm like watching this, like trying to figure out what I am going to do. Like, this shouldn't be happening.
Like, what can I do about this?
Right.
Yeah.
And no, like, stewardess has seen it yet. No flight attendant has seen it yet. And so that a little bit of time goes by, and I now see one of the guys pull out of his backpack a massive bottle of vodka.
Oh my gosh.
And they both just take a few chugs of it. And I guess I should also mention, they've been serving these guys wine the whole time. Like, every time the cart comes by, they get 2 bottles, airplane.
Right. They're the little
airplane bottles of wine.
Single use, yeah.
So basically 1 glass of wine, but every time they go by, they each get 2 glasses. And then they're chugging this vodka that they had brought onto the plane. And so after I saw him like drink the vodka, I was like, okay, this is like
too much.
And so the next time that he starts tapping on the guy, I buzz the flight attendant, and it takes him a minute to get to me. But the first flight attendant that reached me, like, comes over, and the moment that she reaches me, he's like talking to this guy and like being aggressive, so she doesn't even like address me,
right?
And she's like is just watching,
which is like the whole point of anything.
Yeah. And she's like watching and like trying to figure out what's going on, and then like the guy like goes back to his seat or whatever, and then she like looks at me and she's like, sorry, what did you need, sir? And I was like, that like that is these guys are drunk. And I was like, I actually didn't tell her about the vodka that time. And then he did something else again. And she comes back, and she's like, what did you see or whatever? And I was like, well, one, he has a huge bottle of vodka he's drinking. She's like, why didn't you tell us that the first time? That's like crazy. And I was like, sorry. And then while she was talking to me, the guy starts literally hitting and shaking the seat in front of him. Like punching it and shaking it. And I was like, this is it. This is what is happening. And then they had like, she's like, okay. And she goes and tells, another flight attendant. And then there's like 2 of them kind of standing a little bit behind me, just kind of keeping their eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then this other guy comes up, another flight attendant, and he asked me like, okay, what's going on here? Like, tell me, like, whatever. While I am telling him this, the guy reaches up and does the handshake thing again.
To the other guy?
Right.
Okay.
Pulls the same guy back, and then has a hold of like the scruff of his neck.
Oof.
And has his face right next to him. And I was like, I mean, basically this is what has happened. Like, why are you guys just standing around? Like, this is what is happening. And then he like stands up and he was like, you like, sirs, like, are you, you okay? And the other guy like played off like, no, like everything's fine. Right. I'm like, why are you saying everything's fine? This guy's been harassing you for like the last hour or more.
Justifiably so. The guy is extremely drunk.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously an aggressive drunk. Maybe not like, I don't know, but he's obviously an aggressive drunk.
Yes.
And so like, you don't want to be like, yeah, this dude, right? He'd punch you in the face.
And then like the flight attendants keep coming by, and he like keeps saying things to them in Russian, and all of them keep saying, I'm sorry, sir, I do not speak Russian. Mm-hmm. And if this should not surprise you at all, the thing that he keeps saying to them after he says, I don't speak Russian, he keeps going, Russia! Russia! like yelling Russia. Obviously, that was a terrible Russian accent, but like he was like in a very thick, heavy Russian accent. He was like yelling. It basically like somebody from the States, like USA,
America.
Like, sorry, sir, saying like, sorry, sir, I don't speak English, because you're on an international flight or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, USA, USA. You're like, okay. Calm down. Anyways, nothing really happened other than that. Like, he was just being belligerent like the whole time. Finally, he like knocks out and like falls asleep.
Just get a couple more vodkas in him,
Yeah, and then he like slept through the rest of the flight, and they kept an eye on him or whatever, and they cut him off of alcohol.
I wonder what happens in the case that a person is like belligerent and aggressive. Like, I mean, when you think about flight attendants, like what can they actually do?
Well, I mean, I think on a U.S. based airplane there is a marshal.
Yes.
Like on the plane.
I mean,
But
maybe,
I don't know about international flights if they all have like the same kind of thing of, because we weren't flying to or from the States at that point.
right.
So I don't know if they had like a flight marshal, is that what they call him?
Yeah.
You know, a cop, you know, a police
Right.
officer who, you know, is on the plane. Like, I don't know. Like,
Interesting.
I would assume there's somebody whose job it is to like detain
Yeah.
somebody.
Keep the citizens safe.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, he fell asleep and then we landed and they walked off like nothing ever happened. And I was like,
He probably doesn't remember any of that.
yeah. Like,
He was like, man, that was such a great flight.
But what's crazy, yes, I had to sit next to him, but I actually got besides, you know, everybody else on the plane, I got the best end of that deal.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't the guy in front of him that he was like
Right.
kicking and,
Or the guy he was
hitting his seat, or the guy he was like manhandling.
Yeah.
Like, geez.
Crazy.
So that happened.
Yeah.
But that's not even the most exciting story that happened on a plane.
Okay, what's the most exciting?
Most exciting one was on my plane back to New York. So we been to Cape Town, flying from Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually been to Dubai now.
Yeah.
Only a few hours in the airport, but isn't that crazy to think about? Like, in this world, like, I have been to Dubai, like, and I'm just on my way home. You know,
Never saw it.
never. I've been physically in Dubai, but I never actually saw Dubai. Like, this is crazy. Anyways, on the flight back from Dubai to New York City, and going about my flight. At some point, this was the middle of the night because we were all like, everybody was asleep. I had a face mask on. I was like asleep, and the person, there were people next to me, and I hear, like, I wake up, I'm like in a daze, and I wake up and I hear this just like scream. And I think it's the guy. I thought it was the guy next to me because I have earplugs in, so like I didn't hear it like really loud, so I thought it was the guy next to me. And I like smile or laugh because I think that he's having like a night terror or something, like, you know, he's having a nightmare. Well, I lift my mask and I turn behind me, and this older Indian guy. And the reason I mention that there's a lot of Indian because because we're not on a Fly India flight. Like, none of the flight attendants spoke their language.
Yeah.
And so the guy, so all of a sudden the guy behind me, he screams, and I turn, you know, after I realize it's not the guy next to me having a night terror. I turn around, and the guy behind me is having a full-on seizure. He's like thrashing. And this person that was near there was a emergency room nurse or emergency room tech or something. Anyway, she works in the ER. And so like she like runs over and she's like, you know, protect his head, like lay him down. And so like
isn't it amazing how there's always just like somebody who knows what's going on, and like that's kind of cool, like when you think about it. I mean, obviously the likelihood, I think, of a doctor of some sort being on an international flight is kind of high because you know, doctors go places. But like just the fact that like there's just always somebody around who's familiar with medical, that's kind of funny.
And so like lays him down, and there's like, she's like, there's a guy over there, and she's like, grab the, like, you know, the little flight pillows and like wrap his head, like hold his, like keep him from doing anything. So he's like full on like seizure, just thrashing, and now the whole plane is up, obviously. Everybody's looking, so they get him, he stops seizing, and they like are talking to him and like trying to get him, like, you know, to, you know, talk and like ask him like, okay, like, do you know where you're at? Like, do you know what year it is? Like, do you know any, like, trying to like figure this guy out. Well, his wife is with him, but his wife is like full on like can't talk dementia. And so like the nurse at first, whenever he was seizing, she was like, ma'am, do you mind like getting up so we can like take care of this guy? And she just like looks, and one of the flight attendants was like, she can't, like, she was brought on with a wheelchair, like she is not capable of even really understanding. And so she's just like, I look over.
Well, it's probably terrifying to her,
and
especially not being able to express whatever is going on in her head.
And she's just looking with mouth wide open, just like in complete shock.
Yeah.
And like she can't do anything, and he's just like seizing. And so finally he's like, whenever he calms down, they are like asking him, do you have medication? Has this happened to you before? And like he can't answer in English, and nobody is able to speak his language. And somebody finally comes over that is bilingual and that does speak whatever language he spoke, and like was starting to translate. And he was like, okay, that's their medicine. The nurse starts looking through it, and she was like, I don't see any seizure medication in here. And then she was like, I mean, is this her medication? Is it your medication? And it's probably at least an hour of like talking to him and trying to figure out like whose medication is this, because I mean there was tons of medication,
right? And you can't just like give him medication in hopes that it's
right. And so the nurse, like, she found that there were a few different types of heart medication in there, and she was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that, because through like getting little bits of information of him talking, she was able to, through the translator, decipher that like he does take medication for heart stuff in the morning. And she's like, okay, so what happened is this is a over 12-hour flight. Like this is overnight, like over 12 hours. And so he has this morning medication that he didn't know when to take the morning medication. So he didn't take it.
Because it's technically the middle of the night, but it's the morning where he's from, and
And so he didn't take it. So she was pretty sure that he just missed taking his scheduled medication, and it sent him into a seizure, plus, airplanes, everything to do with that. And then he had multiple types of heart medication. She's like, I don't want to give him one that he hasn't been taking. Like, I need to give him the one that he actually has been taking. And she's like asking him, like, which one of these is it? He can't tell her. And then finally, after a while, he comes to enough where he like is able to like decipher that he takes one of, they guess, educated guess of which one he takes. So she gives it to him, whatever. Anyways, she goes back to her seat. We kind of like, I am far from being able to fall back asleep now. Like so I'm like, all right, well, let's watch another movie. I start a movie, and like halfway through or something, I don't know, it was like a couple hours later, I hear him scream again, and he goes into another seizure.
Man.
And so he's like seizing, and I look up at the girl who helped him the first time, and I'm like waving her over, like it's happening again. And so like they come over, basically the whole thing just repeat.
Yeah.
And they like, this time, since it was like the second time that he had a seizure, basically there's not really any point of telling all of this information that happened on the plane. The point is, this just like kept happening. All this like stuff, other than the two seizures, it's like now all these people are trying to help, trying to figure it out. People are calling people's sons off of the plane, and like they're trying to figure out what medication there is. People calling the people on the ground to make sure there's EMTs on standby and all this stuff. So no chance of me falling asleep again.
Yeah.
So I'm just like sitting there, and anyway, he doesn't seize again, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then we land. They told, everybody around knew this was happening. And they said, okay, whenever we land, EMT is going to have to come onto the plane.
Yeah.
And, get this guy who you just witnessed have two seizures.
Yeah. Little important.
Yeah. Don't get up. Well, as soon as we land, people start getting up and like getting all their stuff. And they're like, please return to your seats. Also, I should have mentioned this earlier. So, how there's some people who they're the neck craners, and just like looking like can't. So there was this one lady, the lady that was like 2 rows in front of me, like she like would stand up, like she would turn around completely in her seat, like stand up, put her like sit on her knees and like looking like at everything that's going on, and then she actually got up and like walked up and like to see And then there was this other guy. He kept walking around and like looking and stuff, and they kept tapping and said, "Please return to your seat, sir. Please return to your seat." And like kept both of these people kept like like looking, craning their necks, like trying to figure out what's going on, getting up, walking up. Like they weren't trying to help,
right?
Just trying to witness, trying to watch.
And it's like, I mean, yes, every person is nosy. Like,
right. I mean, obviously, I want to like look. Of course,
you want to know what's going on, but like, you're doing a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Let's help this guy seizing by not being in the way of the medical staff.
So I mentioned that because those two people specifically,
of course,
got up.
Oh my god!
As soon as the plane, they're like in the way, and they keep telling him like, "You need to sit back." Like we're coming through. So all that happens. Anyways, they do actually get him off the plane. They take him. And like then we all get up and we go out and we're waiting on our bags. Bag carousel's going. I'm sitting there waiting on my bag. And while I'm waiting, I hear that scream that I'd heard twice before that night. And I look over and they're waiting on his bag to come down. He's sitting in a wheelchair and he fully seizes again.
Man.
And it's like, could you not like expedite the process of like,
or at least just like, obviously they have his information. They could find his bag and like,
right.
I mean, but the bag is not important at this time. You just seized twice on an airplane. Like, get him to the hospital.
Yeah. It like, I don't know what was happening, but they like didn't like, he still had to get his bag, go through customs and like do all that type of stuff. Like, cause he was an American citizen. So it's not like they, you know.
That's such a interesting point. Like, if there is like medical situation on an airplane, first of all, that's terrifying because you literally have no options. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't have like a fully capable hospital on the airplane, right? Yeah. And you're just lucky there was a nurse there who could like make out what medication was what, you know? Like, that isn't, I don't know. And then like to get off the plane and still have to go through an entire process, even though you've just had 2 seizures on an airplane, feels a little insensitive. Like, hey, let's, you know, I don't know. I don't think the answer is necessarily let's make a hospital wing right here in the airport. But like, there needs to be something.
I mean, I feel like if he was like in the middle of a heart attack or like, you know, if it was something.
I know, but seizures are a big deal.
They are, but I think that if it was like, if he was in a life-threatening situation, they would like, you know, into the ambulance straight to the hospital. Like, I feel, like, I don't think they would be like, sorry, like, you're going to have to go through customs because we need to know who's like in our country. Things. Like, I think they would take him straight to the hospital and like have like some sort of like, you know, police officer with like stand with him, you know, the whole time or something. Fine. But like,
but seizures are, I mean, they can be life-threatening. Like, there's so many things that a seizure is indicative of. I feel like. I mean,
I agree, and I feel like he shouldn't have been made to wait, sitting there,
especially
for his bag.
With a wife who can't communicate about.
Right now,
like,
there's 2 people in wheelchairs.
Exactly, like a wife who can't communicate what's going on with him. He can't communicate what her issues are. Like, just get them to the hospital.
Yeah.
Call their son. You know, like, let's help these people out a little bit. That's insane.
It was crazy. And like, it's just like, that was one, I mean, not one plane, but one trip.
I mean,
like,
only 3 flights.
Yeah.
That's crazy stuff to happen to a person on every flight, basically.
Although, one other awesome flight was our flight from Zimbabwe to Cape Town. We basically got a private jet because like there were so few people on the plane. Yeah. Like, Josh and I took our own rows to ourselves. Like, we didn't even sit next to each other. We took our own rows, and the like 2 or 3 rows in front of us and behind us were completely empty. We were just like chilling. Like,
those are always the best flights.
Like, we paid it was like $200 like to be on this plane that essentially is like our private jet. So that was cool. So that's the flight stories.
Yeah.
A lot of crazy things happen. Yeah. So, don't really have time to go on and talk about Cape Town. Maybe we can talk about that, you know, later at some point. But yeah, that's some story time from Africa and some crazy plane stories because you want something else crazy to think about or just for a fact about Sarah and I that is funny.
Mm-hmm.
Not only have we not been apart, for 14 years or whatever.
Yeah.
We took our very first plane ride together.
Yep.
We went out of and on that plane ride, went out of the United States for the first time together.
And it was 7 flights in 6 days.
Yeah.
We never had been on a plane until, was I 15?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so 15, first flight ever, you were 16.
Mm-hmm.
And we went on 7 flights in 6 days.
Yeah. And we did all of that together. So our first flight, our first international flight, our first time out of the country, all that was done together.
Mm-hmm.
And then up until last year, every single plane that we had been on in our lifetime we had been on together.
Yeah.
Until just last year or 2 years ago, you went on a trip with
a year ago. I went to LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so 27. Up until I was 27, every single one of our flights were together.
Wasn't the Vegas one first?
Oh yeah, I forget that I went to Vegas because Vegas sucks. It's just a thing that I just like.
But that was the same year, or
that was in October, 2016.
Yeah, that one. That's what I'm talking about because 2017 is whenever you went to LA. So but up until 2016, when you were 26 years old or whatever, we had been on every single plane together. Until just 2 years ago.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So a lot of life history, a lot of time we have spent together. Actually, one quick last story. I was listening to a podcast and they were, this daughter was talking about her parents and she was talking about how they were like us and spent their entire life together. Mm-hmm. And they loved each other so much, and they would say things to each other. They're in their 70s or whatever, and say sweet things and whatever. And their kids are like, "Okay, we get it."
You love each other.
Stop. And she's like, "But they spent so much time together. They were at home together. They actually worked, together, and then they came home together. Everything." And she said, but still, her mom would sometimes, her mom sometimes would say, I just feel like I haven't seen your father in so long, or something like that. And they're like, he's in the other room. Mom, he's literally in the other room. What are you talking about? She's like, I don't know. I just miss him. I feel like I haven't seen him in a bit.
That is never going to be us.
No, when I was listening to that, I was like, that's going to be Sarah and I when we're 70 years old. Because we spend so much time together and we haven't been apart hardly ever.
No.
By the time we're 70, we're not going to know what
to do with ourselves.
We're just going to be like, what's happening? It's like, I had a big poop. I had it was gone for 20 minutes. I just missed you.
I feel the opposite though. We were actually talking about this with one of our friends a couple years ago. We're kind of weird sometimes and have these conversations of oh, what if you die, or what if I die? Mm-hmm. What would you do? Who would you be with if you weren't with me? It's healthy. It's fine. But we were having one of those conversations and I said that I think you would probably grieve for a decent amount of time, but you would find somebody else, Mm-hmm. You would get remarried. I feel pretty quick.
I have no idea.
I within a couple years.
I think it depends on how old I was. If something happened within the next decade,
we were talking about young, now.
Yeah, if it was an accident, and something happened within the next decade,
right?
Yeah, I definitely, I would see myself. I mean, remarrying, within a few years.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, and then I think you and our friend both were like. So I think you'd Sarah, I think you would take some time to yourself.
Yeah.
I was like, mm-hmm.
I've been married since I'm 18. I think I'm going to take my single 20s right now.
Yeah. My 30 to 60 is going to be for me.
And then I'm going to find an old guy in a retirement home and we'll just...
Who's rich and I don't have to worry about anything. It'll be fine. That's what I think my life would go like. I love being married and I love being married to you, but I just am not a person who needs another person.
Right. But you probably would get remarried because all the guys would be after you once they know you're single. And so, I mean, you're at some point, you're like, I mean, really, I'm spending more time telling these guys no.
It's so
than just being
annoying
married.
having to turn everybody down.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
that
just because
wouldn't
luckily
happen.
I locked you down, like, basically pre-puberty before people realized, how amazing you
Before
are.
I even had a chance to spread my wings.
Right. Spread your legs and fly away.
Okay, no. Dang it.
That seems like a good place to end it. So, thank you guys for listening to Deeply Curious. Just a reminder that Deeply Curious is sponsored by Hint Water. You can check out Hint and maybe even join their subscription program. Get water sent straight right to your house by going to hint.co/deeplycurious. Also check out our merch, which you can get with the Deeply Curious logo, or actually hand drew Deeply Curious and put it on a shirt as well.
Cody's own writing.
That's right. You can carry my handwriting right on your heart. Check that out by going to shop.codyjensen.com. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.